Sponsored by Black Magic Design, the world's highest quality products for the feature film, post, and broadcast industries. blackmagicdesign.com.
Hello and welcome to No Rest for the Weekend. I'm Jason Godbey and we're back with some more movie reviews. This time it's East Meets West with Mill Valley Film Festival and New York Film Festival. And to help me talk about some films, he's our man in Hollywood and the man behind ActuallyPaid.com, Mr. Bill Hammon. Welcome back, Bill.
Hey, I'd say this is the best coast, but I've lived here 10 years and I can't even get that lie out of my mouth. I'm an East Coast boy, born and raised, Delaware, Philly, all the way. So
I want to get kicked off right away. I think this may end up being a two-parter. So what do you got so far? What's our first item up for bid?
So the marquee film, I think, for Mill Valley, at least as far as a general audience is concerned, is Saturday Night. It's in early release right now. It's playing at the festival, and it'll be nationwide by the end of the month. Written and directed by Jason Reitman and Gil Keenan, the team that did Ghostbusters Afterlife and Ghostbusters Frozen Empire, I should say. And kind of like with Ghostbusters, there is a lean on nostalgia, but this movie is about literally the 90 minutes that led up to the first Saturday Night Live in 1975. So 90 minutes that lead into 90 minutes. And all of the chaos surrounding this, at the time, countercultural revolutionary show, now in its 50th season with Lorne Michaels still at the head. And this is really about Lorne trying to bring all the disparate pieces together. Lorne is played by Gabriel Abel, who was the star of The Fabelmans a couple years ago, and he does a tremendous job, alongside Rachel Sennott, who is becoming very quickly one of my favorite actresses, playing Lorne's ex-wife, Rosie Schuster. The not ready for primetime players are all represented, with varying degrees of verisimilitude in appearance and style, like Corey Michael Smith from, he played the Riddler in Gotham. He plays Chevy Chase, and he nails it. Ella Hunt, she plays Gilda Radner, and I saw Gilda. Like, she absolutely knocked it out of the park. Lamorne Morris from New Girl plays Garrett Morris, no relation. Absolutely fantastic. Nicholas Braun from Succession plays a double bill of Andy Kaufman and Jim Henson. Matthew Rhys plays George Carlin. Kim Matula does a really fine job as Jane Curtin. Emily Fairn playing Lorraine Newman. Their parts are relatively small. Dylan O'Brien, who's an up-and-comer, he plays Dan Aykroyd, and then Matt Wood plays John Belushi. Everybody is represented here in all of their wackiness. You also have, like, Billy Crystal off in the wings. You have Franken and Davis. You have Tommy Dewey playing the first head writer, Michael O'Donoghue, who was also the first one to ever say a line on the show in the Wolverines opening sketch with Belushi. A lot of these people are either relatively new or still not quite A-listers, but you can recognize them. Like I said, Corey Michael Smith, he was on Gotham, 10 years ago. I don't know why he's not a bigger star. He's a tremendous character actor. And Rachel Sennott, she got her big break with Shiva Baby, and then did Bodies, 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 and she does a podcast with Ayo Edebiri. The film, again, it's very frantic, very frenetic. There's a ton of great camera work. The cinematography is really well done here, following everybody around in these long extended takes around Studio 8H, as everything weird goes on in the background, stagehands are coming in left, right, and center. Everything kind of just builds to this whole idea of, can we get the show off the ground? Are we going to even make it to air? Willem Dafoe plays an NBC executive named David Tebbutt, who was responsible for landing Johnny Carson back in the 60s. And he's kind of the boogeyman antagonist with his finger on the button, ready to just toss to a rerun of the previous night's Tonight Show if this doesn't go off. And one of the things that struck me as kind of odd about this film is that this is a Sony production, not a Universal. NBC basically has no real involvement with this. Which I think is a good thing because it allows the film to take certain liberties. It allows them to basically make David Tennant and Dick Ebersol into villains, which I don't think Universal would let them get away with. It lets us be a lot more adult with the humor because Catherine Carton plays a network standards and practices censor who's redlining the script as we go, but she's so ultra conservative Christian that she doesn't know euphemisms like blue or golden. And all these writers are basically trying to talk in circles around her to try to convince her that, oh, no, this is perfectly safe and tame, not going to offend anybody. It makes for some good comedy, especially when Tommy Dewey as Michael O'Donoghue just confronts her directly and just calls her on the nonsense. You got a lot of fun aside. John Batiste, who kind of composed the score for the film, subs in for Billy Preston and gets to perform Nothing from Nothing, which any excuse you can give to have him have screen time, I'm happy with that. Weirdly to me, the least impressive performances are from the biggest name actors. Like I said, I love Willem Dafoe, but he plays David Tennant as just a scum-sucking executive. You know, just a money man with indoor sunglasses and a leisure suit. Like he kind of reminds me of Al Pacino's character from Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. Just that kind of sleazy money man. It doesn't really. It's not a bad performance by any means, but it's not. There's nothing really for him to work with to do anything beyond the minimum. J.K. Simmons, Academy Award winner J.K. Simmons, plays Milton Berle. His moments are funny, but all I saw was J.K. Simmons doing a Milton Berle impression. Not that that's a bad thing, but again, when you have the likes of Corey Michael Smith and Ella Hunt actually convincing me that they're Chevy Chase and Gilda Radner, J.K. Simmons could only do a vague impression of Uncle Milty. And it's done for the grossest reasons, but I kind of love it. Finn Wolfhard is in this movie. You know, one of the biggest stars of his generation. He plays a page, just an NBC page standing outside handing out the free tickets to the show. It's kind of amazing how much the big stars have almost nothing to do, and these people who are basically trying to prove that they're ready for primetime are playing the not ready for primetime players. I think it's a very interesting juxtaposition. The script plays a lot like Birdman or Aaron Sorkin's Steve Jobs movie. There's a lot of Sorkin-y type dialogue in there, which your mileage may vary. I'm okay with it, especially because it's a little bit riskier. It's a little bit more honest for the era when it comes to drug references and sexual humor. And honestly, you know, let's just call it what it is, sexual harassment. I mean, it was 1975. This kind of stuff was generally allowed. Not that we condone it, not that we approve of it, just it's admitting what's there. The only flaw I really have for the script is that it makes Lorne Michaels almost too much into a doe-eyed wanderer. This is all about him trying to make sure that this project gets over the finish line, gets to air when he's basically set up to fail. You know, how accurate all of that is to the reality of the first episode of SNL, I don't know. I mean, I know that David Tennant did not literally have his finger on the button waiting to dump out. You know, that never happened. But it makes for good dramatic tension. Because we know the show's going to go off. It's been going off for 50 years. I mean, so you have to at least pretend to have a risk in that respect. They played a little bit too safe with Lorne as this, you know, visionary who's just, you know, trying to do a good thing. I think it could have stood to have him be a little bit more raw, a little bit more confrontational, for lack of a better term. But for what it was, I was very pleasantly surprised by it. And again, Gabriel Bell He made his mark with the Fablemans, and now he's kind of, like, in essence, establishing himself more as an adult actor. Like I mean, he was an adult when he played, Sammy Fableman, but he was an adult playing a teenager. Now he's an adult playing an adult. So I think he did a very good job. And again, Senat, Smith, Hunt, Morris, they absolutely nailed it. And it's that force of personality that they bring to people who are still around. I mean, yeah, some of the actors are dead. Pretty much all the executives are dead. You know, so yeah, like David Tebbutt cannot defend himself against whatever's going on. But among the original cast of the show, everybody but Gilda and Belushi are still around. So they can always raise a stink about this. And I think in that respect, this cast did justice to them. And this script did justice to them. I'm very surprised that NBC and Universal don't seem to have had any direct influence on this. This is very much a Sony production. But if you're gonna do something madcap and zany about the most madcap and zany show in television history, I think this is the way to go about it. I think it was really well done.
It's interesting because I remember George Clooney said that you shouldn't have really famous people playing famous people. And I think this is why. I think the reason that you had better results is because J.K. Simmons. You know what he's like, and maybe they thought, well, we'll just have J.K. Simmons do a Milton Berle impression, and that'll be enough. Like that'll be funny. I haven't seen it. I have mixed feelings about it because I remember a lot of the old Saturday Night Live, and it was kind of a thing that was in reruns that when you grew up, and it just seems weird to see other actors like cosplaying those same people.
I had a similar apprehension because again, all but two of them are still alive. Weird personal anecdote, like, for people who get into the television and film industry, this has always kind of been like a dream show. And for me, literally, like, I have a recurring dream where I'm somehow hosting or in the cast, and I'm backstage waiting for my next cue, waiting for my next sketch, waiting for my next costume change. And now, as a person who works in television, who does behind the scenes stuff, when you see all this madness come together, it hits home. Like I've experienced this stuff firsthand, and that's kind of why I think it informs the recurring dream in a weird way. This is probably the most important show in the history of television. For the meta purposes, they definitely understand what goes into a massive production like this, and there's a reason it sustained itself for 5 decades. And I think that understanding overrides the misgivings I had about, playing people who still are on this side of the earth. I can see where people may be apprehensive and may not like it. I can totally understand that, but for me, that's what got it over the top.
I'm going to move on to my first film, which was I saw screened at New York Film Festival, and I have to say, going into these things, it's really interesting because there's when the public sees the films, and then you get the press and industry screenings. This was a press and industry screening that I saw, and it was packed. The movie is called Anora. It's the latest from Sean Baker. I believe it won the Palme d'Or at Cannes, so it's already getting tons of critical acclaim. Basically, this movie is like it's like Pretty Woman, but the nightmare version of it. And in my review of it, I described the experience of the film as sort of being grabbed by the lapels and thrown through a plate glass window, only to find you're not dead, but you've hit the ground and you're banged up and bruised, but you were like only on the first floor, so you're still like really exhilarated that you're alive. That was the experience of it, and it's got some great performance. It's very performance driven. I think that's what we're going to see a lot of in these movies that we're talking about. Is like performance-driven dramas and real like indie films. This movie, the main character Annie, who's also, her full name is Anora, but she goes by Annie, played by Mikey Madison, who I saw in the new Natalie Portman streaming series on Apple TV. I think it's called Lady in the Lake, where she plays like a teenager in that. So, which was kind of weird because she's like really naked in this movie. She plays a sex worker. She dances in a strip club and occasionally moonlights as an escort. She meets this character called Ivan, played by Mark Edelstein. He's the son of like a Russian oligarch, but maybe a gangster, like maybe does some illegal stuff. We don't know. He kind of hires her to be his girlfriend for a week, and it's a wild ride of booze and drugs and parties and nightclubs, and it all sort of culminates in this trip to Las Vegas where these two young people decide to get married so that Yvonne can become a U.S. citizen. And then once they're married, she quits her job at the club. She's living with her new husband in their big mansion. And then everything goes to hell when his parents find out about the marriage. They send this guy called Toros, played by Karan Karagulian. Sorry about the names. I know I'm mispronouncing them. He's a sort of their man in New York, he's got these two guys with him, these two goons that are both very funny characters. The movie is surprisingly funny. There's a lot of humor in it, and the crowd was like really laughing, and I found myself laughing too at certain moments, mainly because of their awkwardness. There's some very kind of raw scenes, and it's very on brand for Sean Baker. He's done movies about he does movies with a lot of non-actors, Florida Project and Tangerine. But this is really kind of raw and real, and the performances are really excellent. They're very, very good, and they're very realistic. It's like this is how real people would act in this situation. It's definitely it's a great ensemble, but it's really Annie's story and what she goes through. And for Madison, I think this is a star-making turn. I don't know if she'll get recognized by the Academy and other people, but she should. I think it captures something that we don't really see a lot of today, and I think that's why it got all the attention. It's a real independent film, and it really did something different, and it's not about robots or car chases or there's no explosions or anything. And I thought, oh my god, you got these Russian gangster types, there's going to be a gunfight and a car chase, and none of that happens. They totally don't go with any of the genre tropes, and I think in that way it's really surprising. So, but I would definitely recommend it if you get a chance to see it. All right, we don't really have that much time left on the meter here, but maybe we can squeeze in one more movie. What else you got for us?
Okay, so you want to talk about real? Let's talk real. Zurawski v. Texas. This is probably going to be one of the marquee documentaries for the year because it's basically happening in real time. We are 2 years removed from the Supreme Court overturning Roe v. Wade, and in several states that triggered abortion bans. And one of the first major case studies of what happens in a post-Roe world concerns Amanda Zurawski, a woman in Texas who she and her husband were trying for a long time to get pregnant. They finally did. And then at about 16 weeks, she miscarried. Her water broke too early. The pregnancy wasn't viable. And when she went to the hospital to get care, the very draconian Texas abortion ban basically said no. The exception is for the only exception is for like the life of the mother, but she wasn't close enough to death to get care. And because of that, she went into septic shock and may never be able to conceive. So she, along with several other women in the state, who basically had these horrible, miscarriages and non-viable pregnancies, sued the state of Texas to say, hey, at least clarify the law. Tell me what counts as my life being in danger and what doesn't, so that a doctor can give me proper advice and not be in fear of losing their medical license and going to prison for life. So this film essentially chronicles her case along with several others through the district court system and then to the state level court, where they initially get success, and validation, and then at the state level where it's ultra conservative and honestly, they don't care about a woman's life. Let's just put the fine point on it. They're ignored. And it is quite tragic to, see how this all unfolds, because it's kind of a microcosm of what happens in all politics in this country. Like, the more you talk to people and the more you learn from them, from interacting with them, from just, being a human being to another human being, the more empathetic you become and the more you're willing to reconsider your positions and beliefs. And the people who are most at a remove, the Texas Supreme Court in this case, the further they are from these people, the less compassionate they are. I mean, this film has a lot of graphic images. We see a woman vomit on the stand because she's reliving this horrible trauma that happened to her. We see a funeral for a fetus that was forced to be born and died 4 hours afterward because it had no chance of survival. It had an underdeveloped brain. It was never going to make it. And it takes a lot to sit through it. It really does. Like, this is not for the faint of heart. It's not gross by any means, but we're dealing with literal life and death circumstances that happen in the real world, in this country, in 2024. The resolution of Zurawski's case was only in May. And the film also incorporates Kate Cox's case, which was appealed to the Supreme Court just this week, and the appeal was denied by the people who overturned Roe v. Wade. I try not to get political when I talk about these things, but there's a line of basic human decency that I think these laws, especially when they're incredibly vague, because all they care about is we're saving the babies, that needs to be just brought front and center and exposed for the BS that it is. I do not quibble with anybody's personal beliefs. If you are massively, pro-life, anti-abortion, I understand that. I went to high school in a very Catholic community. I get it. But again, spend time with these women, learn their stories. These aren't just, straw men that a political wing is trying to paint. That's the purpose of this documentary. Like, you look at polls, even hardline conservatives think there should be exceptions to abortion laws by wide margins. And all they were asking was, define the exemptions so that my doctor can give me the health care I need. And when you see the likes of Lindsey Graham rolling his eyes at a congressional hearing, when you see a Texas Supreme Court justice saying, why didn't you sue the doctor for malpractice? I was like, what were they supposed to do? I was like, these are women who wanted their babies. These weren't elective abortions. These women wanted this. And when it went wrong, they relied on their government for help because that was the option they were left with, and their government betrayed them. To the point where Amanda Zurawski nearly died. To the point where Kate Cox nearly died. To the point where an actual OBGYN who had a miscarriage, has to basically pass off her own clients because she can't go through this again. That's the point of the film. It takes a lot. If anybody wants to steer clear and say, no, I just can't handle that, it would trigger me too much, fully understand. But in order to truly grasp the issue that's at hand here, and the need for basic empathy, compassion, and decency that comes along with these women's plights, I think it's essential that people watch it.
Man, it's amazing that they got the movie done.
Especially as quickly as they did. Again, Zurawski's case was resolved in May of this year, and by October, there's a feature-length documentary about it.
That is amazing that they got the film done. And, it's no accident that they did this movie, that they got it out in an election year. when so much is hanging on the line. I mean, we could talk about this subject till we're blue in the face. It's something I feel strongly about as well. I don't.
The best way to sum it up is this is the best movie you wish didn't exist.
That would be a tough one for me to watch, but I'm glad somebody made it, because it's stuff that has to be seen and has to be said, and hopefully it'll gain some attention, and hopefully it'll make a difference. Anyway, I got to wrap up, but for people who want to read your reviews, see more of you, where can they find you on the web?
For even more cheery subject matters, go to actuallypaid.com. You could go on Twitter, X, whatever the hell they want to call it, or on YouTube at actually_paid. And you can find me on Medium as well. And of course, you can find me right here on the BTRP Media Network. Shameless plug.
All right, man. Thanks so much. And we'll see you again real soon. And that's all we got for you today. Thanks so much for taking this trip down the rabbit hole. For more of our content, including more movie reviews, visit NoRestForTheWeekendPodcast.com. You can subscribe on your favorite podcast app or on YouTube, youtube.com/GetBehindTheRabbit. I'd like to thank Bill Hammon, and a big thanks to our sponsor, Black Magic Design. For Behind the Rabbit Productions, I'm Jason Godbey. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next time.
This is the BTRP Media Network.